I arrived in Corfu on a gorgeous October morning on a Regent Seven Seas cruise. I'd never been there before and had signed up for a special 4x4 tour of the island. I'd been on a Jeep tour once before and so expected an off-road excursion that would hopefully bring me to places that were off the beaten path. However, the excursion was much different than expected. There were 27 of us that signed up for the excursion, so we had 4 people per 4x4, with 1 person for each vehicle volunteering to drive. The car was a stick shift, which eliminated a few people. The back seat of the vehicle was pretty small, so I felt sorry for the larger man sitting next to me, although he never complained. We were told to get in a caravan and follow the lead driver. We immediately went through some city traffic and eventually came to a road that took us to higher elevations. The ride wasn't very scenic, but we eventually stopped at a lookout to get a view of the island and Ionian Sea beyond. Then it was back in the vehicles to travel on some narrow road to the small village of Sokraki, high in the hills. We all got out to relax at a local restaurant and were served spinach pie, tomatoes, cucumbers, and bread. We took our time enjoying the weather, and then our guide led us on a walking tour of the town, which was quaint and cute. The town was mostly renovated, but there were still some old buildings that just sat unoccupied. We then got back in the vehicles and drove to the other side of the island to Bella Vista to take in more views. From what I could see of the town, there were just a couple of restaurants and some souvenir shops, but there were some beautiful vistas of the sea. After a short while, we got back in the 4x4s again and headed back to the ship. So we never went off-road, although we were on some narrow ones. Consequently, it didn't quite meet my expectations of an adventurous excursion. I was able to see both sides of the island and meet some very nice people, but it's not an excursion I would recommend. Once back to the port, I decided to skip eating and take the shuttle immediately to downtown Corfu, since I hadn't seen any of the city yet. I only had a couple of hours before I had to be back on the ship, but I wanted to see as much of the island as I could. The shuttle dropped me off at the old fortress of Corfu, so I decided to pay the minimal €3 fee to view it. With limited time, I buzzed through it, but was glad I visited. The old fortress is one of the most impressive fortification works in Greece. The fortifications were constructed over a period of about 15 centuries, so there's a lot of history here. There are 3 phases of fortification represented: the Byzantine, the early Venetian, and the late Venetian period. There are a couple museums where you can see paintings and artifacts representing these time periods. It is always amazing to see the craftsmanship of the ancient architecture with the stone walls, towers, hallways, and pathways. There was a restaurant inside the walls which offered an interesting setting to eat, and there were some beautiful sea views as well. When I left the fortress, I headed into the shopping district. Like many of the cities we visited on this Adriatic and Mediterranean cruise, the shopping area was very pretty. This downtown had quite a few newer buildings mixed in with the older ones. There were beautiful stone walkways, narrow alleyways, and outdoor cafes. The pathways curled around in all different directions. As a matter of fact, I ended up getting a little lost. When I came out the other side of the shopping district, I saw what I thought was the fortress. It looks like it, doesn't it? It turns out there are 2 areas of ancient stone buildings, so when I tried to find my way to the front of what I thought was the fortress, it didn't exist. Once I figured it out, I was able to make my way back to the shuttle and onto the ship. I definitely saw more of the island than the typical tourist in one day, but it was a bit exhausting. If I had a do-over, I would have spent the day in the downtown area, enjoyed some local cuisine, and had a more leisurely visit to the fortress. That would be my recommendation for anyone that only has one day in Corfu. To follow more of my senior and solo travel journeys, please click subscribe below. Cheers!